Hello class, this is Dr. Delmar. As you can see on your screen, today we are going to walk through our Unit 1 lecture notes. And while I am providing to you this document, this Unit 1 lecture notes document to you in electronic format, I'm also going to walk you through some of the notes because there'll be some things that I'll add to this verbally that is not simply captured in the written notes. So you must also watch this video in particular to answer the assessment questions because the majority of the assessment questions comes from the verbal words in this recording and not just the written lecture notes. The reason that I provide you the written lecture notes is because it's difficult sometimes for people to read and remember notes if they're just on one computer screen. It's helpful, particularly the older you get, for us as adults to need the tangible document. So it may be more helpful for you to print these these notes, if you have that availability, and then you can have that in hard copy. And it allows you just to kind of touch it, have it there in front of you. You can use a highlighter, make notes. I always recommend having that, especially if you're only working on one computer screen. It's difficult to toggle between all the things when you're using, say, your notes and you're doing, for example, the lecture assessment or something to that nature. Just in general, it helps to have those printed notes if you have that ability to do so. If not, you can still make it work with the electronic version of the notes and this recording, which is why I'm giving you both. So each week you'll have lecture notes. I'm covering this content within your orientation as well. But just because this is the first unit, I wanted to make sure that I attended to that, just letting you know. So each week you'll have a lecture video and a lecture assignment along with the notes. And so this is our week 1, or what we call unit 1 lecture notes. So this covers week 1. You'll have an assessment that goes along with this video, and then you'll do one the second week, the third week, and the fourth week. Then the assessment is for a grade. Essentially, the assessment ensures that you're watching this video or listening to the recording, not just reading the notes itself. And that's just part of the course package in itself. It helps you really to connect with the material, and it's going to help you see some of the transfer of these skills into your work or daily life. So this math is very basic. You'll see here that that's what I start with, right? This is very basic math. It's not complex, but it is extremely important for success in health-related college courses and in your workplace settings. So business math, this is topics that are not necessarily equation based. Well, while there might be some equations or computations that are provided to you, this is more about financial and business literacy. And so I recommend that you consider this as a foundational knowledge opportunity, and it will help you build your fluency with some of the concepts that you may be familiar with already. So again, printing the notes is recommended. And each week you need to listen to the audio or the recording, and you need to review the notes themselves. So that might be an example of a question that's on the first assessment is, why do you need visual notes or hard copy notes? For me, I think it helps you to be more closely connected to the material, and it's a better study tool to have the tangible, like the notes in your hand. And then also, what do you need to do every week? Well, it's to listen to the recording and to access the written notes itself. So those are two things that might be on your assessment, for example. So the math concepts in these notes are commonly used in medication dosing, time management, patient care documentation, billing and insurance, and everyday business decisions. And so what I really want you to think of is not just in your current position in life and what you're doing, but also for the future. We're building that foundational knowledge. And so this could be as an employee. Maybe you wanted to have your own business one day. You might be a manager or a team leader. You might be a trainer. You might participate in research. There's all types of avenues and perspectives for which this information could be handy. And I'm again mentioned here like a math notebook that you may want to consider printing these notes. So first of all, let's just define what a fraction is. A lot of times in math, we just kind of jump into fractions and we don't actually cover, quote unquote, what it actually is. So I'm sure you are all familiar by now about what you think fractions are and what they look like. But I wanted to just make sure that I gave you the definition of a fraction. And you can see here through the different bullet points, this is how it's broken down. So it's a pretty complex definition of what makes a fraction. But I thought it would be neat to kind of step back from just looking at fractions to describing actually what it is versus jumping into like the solving that you do in algebra. Okay. And then there's some examples. And so how are fractions used in the business or the healthcare settings? Well, they're very, very common. And so if you're one of those people that says, oh, I'm never great with fractions, well, this is your opportunity to refresh, re-energize your interest in understanding and to really seek out understanding the basics of fractions so that you can apply it, for example, in these different situations. And so you can see here the medication order. So for example, the order from the doctor says to give 1/2 of a tablet, or a patient might spend 3/4 of an hour in therapy. Of course, these are very basic, but you could see just from these foundational examples how they may be more complex, but I wanted you to at least have an entry point for understanding how these would be used in your healthcare settings. You may even find yourself as a manager or a leader or business owner, or maybe you go into the accounting aspects of health in some point in your career. I mean, not everybody's on that direct linear path, right? There's all kinds of opportunities within your career field. And so you may have to, be over budgets and dealing with budgets, or you might have to think about insurances and discounts. And so this is all the places that fractions can show up. And so I break down a couple of different types of fractions. You can see here there's equivalent fractions and then how equivalent fractions work. And so I do suggest you spend some time looking at this. And the example here is like when you start with 1/2 and then you multiply the numerator and the denominator by 2, you're going to get 2/4. And then we multiply both by 3, and then we get 3/6. This is important because you may have different formats of a fraction. And I wanted you to just see like one example and what that might look like. And then of course, you're probably, I say of course, I assume most of you are familiar with the need to simplify or reduce fractions. And so this is where math fluency becomes important. I know you can always Google or AI the answers to things. I mean, that's what we do, right? We have computer and software systems that do a lot of this for us. So if you're in the middle of these notes and thinking, Dr. Delmar, why do I need to know how to do this? The computer will do it for me. There'll be some kind of program. I can double check my work. Well, yes. But even AI, for example, Copilot, it's called Co for a reason. These are partners that goes along with the human thinking. And so you want to make sure that you have that human element and also that you have a fundamental understanding to be able to see if there's errors, for example. So it might not be that you're solving something. I mean, it could, right? But you might need to be just aware if something looks kind of hinky, right? Like, oh, that doesn't look right. I need to double check it. We all know computers aren't perfect either. Don't tell the computers that. Or if you see that somebody else made a mistake. I mean, there's all kinds of situations where you may not even have to just do the calculation, but be able to see if there's an error or if just things look kosher. And so for that reason, you want to have some fluency in fractions so that you're able to be knowledgeable and informed as you're using fractions. And so there's a step-by-step explanation for you, and then it moves on after that to how to add the fractions with the same denominator. Again, these are all ways that math shows up in your everyday life and or the healthcare setting. And then decimals are extremely critical. So just as much as you see fractions, you're going to see decimals. And so I thought, again, okay, let's just start with what a decimal is, just to make sure that you have that kind of just basic comprehensive understanding of what a decimal is. So we're not just going to jump into solving decimals. I want you to understand what it is. And we always start with what they call a base 10, a base number 10. So think about maybe when you're in primary school, you might have had a number line. And then decimals use place value. And the reason we use place value is because you need to know how far over to the right or to the left, to the positive or the negative, you're going to go with the place. And here are some places that you'll see decimals show up. So healthcare records, medication amounts, financial documents. Again, maybe you're not doing the calculation, but you need to understand implications and be able to detect errors and just really be able to piece it together into a more comprehensive story or perspective, depending on what the task requires you to do. So you're becoming informed and an expert in this area. And then I just highlight here, so 1/4 written as a decimal is 0.25. That's probably one of the more basic ones, right? But I use this to highlight that when you're reading charts or entering data into a computer system, it's important to be able to know what to enter, because you might not just be recognizing, in this case, the errors or being able to speak to something, but maybe you're doing data entry. Maybe you're reviewing the work of someone else that did data entry. Maybe somebody did data entry and you come behind them and you're sharing in the work, like shift change or something of that nature. So there's going to be a lot of situations where you really need to be strong in this type of math and fluent so that you can be a leader and accurate in the work. And then rounding, you're probably, again, pretty familiar with rounding, but there's a section here that I do suggest that you go over in your notes. And percents. Again, I'm really hoping for this week 1 notes that these are like, oh, you feel pretty comfortable with these concepts. Like, oh, I know percents. I know what that means. But I want you to really spend time. And that's why I wanted you to really print these out. Again, if you do it on your device, no problem. But I just feel like it's a strategy to have it printed out in front of you. And so I really want you to go back and become familiar, so you're not just having to Google an answer every time or use a calculator every time you need an answer. I really want you to work on building your fluency in this area. And percent is another area that you need to be familiar with. Here we talk about converting decimals to percents. This could show up in the healthcare field and really in probably your everyday life. I would say percents and converting to percents comes up all the time. I know I'm constantly converting things, like if I'm shopping or maybe I'm doing a recipe or something of that nature. But here is a health example. So for example, if a test is 90% accurate, it means that you're correctly identifying 90 out of 100 cases. Now, I want to kind of move away from that type of math for a second, because we are in an abbreviated class. We're only in a 4-week class. And so I did want to go ahead and bring in some of the real world applications. Like we'll talk about property taxes and insurance and mortgages and things like that in this class. And I wanted to make sure that we start talking about sales tax, which is what I just mentioned, especially since that's a offset when we talk about percentages and decimals. And so there's some information with an example here about converting and sales tax. You can see here about the discounts. Unit rates, right? That's if you think of old school problems in math, right? When you did a problem solving in math problems, word problems, you always had to have the unit. If you didn't have the unit or the rate, then it's not a correct answer. So like if the answer here is 12, it's 12 what? $12. So it's not you probably remember your math teacher from high school telling you if you don't put the dollars, it's not a correct answer. You came up with 12, but it's not 12, it's $12. And so just being accurate with rates, again, very important, particularly in the health field, that you have an attention to detail and that, again, you have some fluency with this type of math. And of course, as you see here, when we're dealing with dosages, that's going to be of particular importance, right? That's life or death type implications. And so here's just some connection for you. I just wanted to kind of write it out for you. So if you needed like subtitles, this video, you can, this recording, you can put on your subtitles. And then also this is printed for you. So if you have any kind of hearing or vision needs, or you just feel like you learn better with the printed material, or you learn better with being able to pause the video and look at the notes, no matter your learning style or your needs, hopefully having these printed notes and this recording is going to help you. And what I did was I summarized what I just spoke about as far as in the need for these math skills to have really a safe and effective working situation in the healthcare fields. And so this is just a summary. And then some key reminders for you that we're building fluency. Your accuracy is what matters, not speed. I want you to really double check your work if you're ever doing something with decimals or fractions or percentages. It's really about accuracy and ensuring that you build these fundamentals in a very strong and fluent manner. Alrighty, so this is going to be underneath your first week Unit 1 lecture notes, and they'll also be your assessment that accompanies this. Just please make sure, again, that you listen to this before you take your assessment questions, and I'll have those posted here shortly. Thank you all. Have a great week.